Our next story is about Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington, a visit that comes amid growing fears of a wider war erupting in West Asia. Before I tell you more, let me just show you these visuals. These are protests outside Netanyahu's hotel in Washington, D.C. This, by the way, is just a sample of the not-so-warm welcome being planned by protesters for Netanyahu. The anger is palpable. Back home in Israel, protests broke out at the Ben Gurion International Airport just before Netanyahu flew to Washington, D.C. In fact, a group of hostage families plans to publicly challenge Netanyahu at each step during his Washington visit. Among them is Yehuda Cohen, father of an Israeli hostage. According to him, Netanyahu is only interested in his political survival. Cohen, by the way, is at the forefront of a swelling contingent of critical hostage families. Remember, Netanyahu is facing mounting domestic pressure to agree to a truce and hostage release deal. He faces complaints in Israel that he is avoiding closing a ceasefire and hostage release deal so as to stay in power. But the question remains, for how long can he do that really? For how long can he try and sabotage a ceasefire? Also, the question is he starting to succumb to all that pressure on him? Interestingly, Netanyahu told families of hostages held in Gaza that a deal that would secure their release could be near, according to his office. This, by the way, as fighting raged on the ground and Israeli forces pressed on with a new raid into Gaza's southern area of Khan Yunis. In the backdrop also is the sentiment of what the Israelis really feel about Netanyahu's handling of the hostage crisis. Remember, we told you earlier, as per a poll, 70% of Israelis think Netanyahu is not doing enough to get hostages released. The survey conducted by Midcam Research Agency revealed that 70% of Israelis say Netanyahu is very or somewhat responsible for failing to reach a deal to free the Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. So that's definitely not good news for Netanyahu. At the same time, look at the way Netanyahu is being snubbed in Washington in a way. Kamala Harris has reportedly declined to preside over the Senate chamber when Netanyahu addresses a joint meeting of the Congress on Wednesday afternoon. So that in itself is humiliating for Netanyahu. In fact, an Israeli official has called Harris's decision disappointing. An Israeli official told The Telegraph that the move to boycott the speech on Wednesday during a difficult war against Iran and its terror proxies, quote unquote, is disappointing. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has requested an in-person meeting with former President Donald Trump while in the U.S. this week. That's what the Politico has reported, citing people familiar with the outreach. And the report added that Netanyahu and Trump's teams have met in recent days in order to explore the idea of a meeting, but Trump is yet to agree. So basically, we do not know if even Trump would be meeting Netanyahu. Remember, the main purpose of Netanyahu's visit is a speech to a joint meeting of the Congress, the address that Harris will be skipping. As the Senate president, Harris normally sits behind the foreign leaders, but she will not be there. Meanwhile, multiple protests are planned outside the capital, with some condemning the Israeli military campaign overall and others expressing support for Israel, but pressing Netanyahu to strike a ceasefire deal and bring home the hostages. The largest protest, by the way, is set for Wednesday morning, with organizers planning to march around the Capitol building, demanding Netanyahu's arrest. As far as Netanyahu's Washington visit overall is concerned, there is a lot at stake. There is hope for progress in the US-led efforts to mediate an end to the Israel-Hamas war. Remember, before flying out of Israel, Netanyahu pointed to longer-term issues. He said he wanted to talk to Joe Biden about continuing the war against Hamas and confronting other Iran-backed armed groups in the region, as well as freeing hostages. Meanwhile, there are some positive developments. There has been a breakthrough in the reconciliation process between Hamas and Fatah. Palestinian factions, including rivals Hamas and Fatah, have agreed to end their divisions and form an interim national unity government. This was during negotiations in China that ended on Tuesday. So let's just take a step back. Where do things really go from here? And as far as Netanyahu's visit is concerned, will it yield any significant takeaway? While the visit could be crucial to a ceasefire deal, what will Netanyahu choose? And in the near future, will he continue to try and sabotage a ceasefire? We will be tracking the developments very closely. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.